My friend's grand wedding. The bride is fair-skinned, beautiful, with long legs. But here I am, receiving a message from my friend's wife in the dead of night. Are you awake? No, I replied. Warm yet? Wild, where do you live? A little sensitive. I'll come to you. At midnight, around 12, I got a friend request. I opened it and took a quick look. It was a profile. The profile picture was a photo. Delicate, well-defined features, just like a movie star. This woman seemed strangely familiar, but for the moment, I couldn't recall where I had seen her. I looked at the friend request note again. The name read, Liu Ryan. I patted my forehead. And finally, it hit me. Isn't this Jibota's new wife? Jibota is an old college buddy of mine. We were close like brothers back in school. Even after graduation, we kept in touch. Just recently, I even attended Jibota's wedding. No wonder this woman looked so familiar. But what did she want with me at such a late hour? Curious but wary, I still accepted the request. After a while, Liu Ryan sent me a message. He Kong, are you asleep? I replied, just about to. What's going on? Sister-in-law, Liu Ryan said, sorry to bother you. Is it convenient for you to take a call? My mind was a bit foggy. What could she want this late? So I replied, it's fine. Liu Ryan called immediately. I quickly picked up. And on the other end, I heard the sound of a woman choking back tears. My heart sank. Could it be that the two of them are having some sort of conflict? I hurriedly asked sister-in-law, what on earth happened? Jibota was taken by the police. What dot he was taken by the police? I was shocked, quickly sitting up to ask, when did this happen? Through her tears, Liu Ryan replied today. Jibota has been missing all day. And he didn't come home tonight either. Just now, I got a call from the local police station, saying he's been detained for criminal investigation. Did the police tell you the specific reason for his detainment? They said Jibota is suspected of embezzlement, and it was his workplace that reported it. Jibota works at a private, publicly traded company as a product operations manager, responsible for overseeing over 100 people. Last week, he and I were drinking together, and he mentioned that there were complex relationships at work. A lot of intense infighting. I never thought that just a few days later, he would be taken away. When I got the call from the police station, I felt like the sky was falling. What should I do? Liu Ryan's voice was filled with helplessness. At a time like this, I really don't know who else to turn to. You're Jibota's friend, and you studied law as well. Please, you must help him. I reassured her sister-in-law. Don't worry. Jibota's issue is my issue, and I'll definitely help. Thank you. He Kong. Let's meet to talk this over. Liu Ryan's tone was anxious. I'm so sorry to disturb your rest so late. I couldn't help but feel uneasy, but I'm really on the verge of losing my mind, she said. I tried to comfort her, since this has already happened. Don't panic yet. Tomorrow morning, I'll come to see you and get a clearer picture. No! I'm coming over now. Give me your address. I had no choice. At this hour, all the restaurants and coffee shops were closed, so I sent her my address. Half an hour later, there was a knock at the door. I walked over and opened it. Liu Ryan stood there at the entrance, her eyes and cheeks swollen and red. She'd clearly been crying for a long time. At about 1.7 meters tall, she had a graceful figure with shoulder-length short hair that made her look intellectual, capable, and professional. Even without makeup, she had an impressive presence. My friend, marrying a beautiful wife like this. He was truly blessed. I greeted her sister-in-law and quickly invited her in. Liu Ryan asked, is there anyone else here? I replied, just me, nobody else. She hesitated for a moment, but then stepped inside. I showed her into the living room. I invited her to sit on the sofa and poured her a glass of water. Liu Ryan accepted the glass. Glancing around, he Kong. Your girlfriend isn't here with you? I shrug. Girlfriend, I don't have one. I've been single this whole time. One person to feed. No one else to worry about. Liu Ryan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked at me saying, oh, but G. Boder told me you change girlfriends pretty often. I was taken aback. Did he really say that about me? Maybe he got me mixed up with someone else. Liu Ryan gave an awkward smile. What kind of girl do you like? I can introduce you to someone. I casually replied. Someone like you would be just fine. Hearing this, Liu Ryan's face flushed instantly, since I didn't know her well. I tried to ease the awkwardness with some small talk, but somehow it only made things more uncomfortable. Breaking the silence, Liu Ryan asked, can you be G. Boda's lawyer? I nodded. I mostly handle non-litigation cases. But taking on a litigation case here and there isn't a problem. That's great. I knew I'd found the right person. She paused, looking slightly emotional, and said, my husband's case has issues. How could he possibly embezzle from the company? He must be innocent. I knew it wouldn't be easy to hear, but I still had to be honest, sister-in-law. Based on my understanding of criminal cases, if there wasn't sufficient evidence for a conviction, the police wouldn't detain him so quickly. What should we do? Her face clouded over. I don't know anything about his situation, and now I'm just sitting here helplessly. After thinking for a moment, I said, the investigation has just started. Even as his lawyer, I can't access the case files yet. The only option is to request a meeting. The core of the issue lies with G. Boda's company. I suggest speaking with someone from his workplace. I'll leave it all to you. Please, I'm counting on you. Alright, I said. Sister-in-law, you should head back now. Get some rest. Liu Ryan nodded, stood up, and took her leave, saying she'd come back tomorrow. I went back to my room, yawning several times in a row. I was exhausted. I had just fallen asleep when a faint scratching sound woke me up. Half awake, I got up, realizing someone was at the door. I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Liu Ryan. What's she doing back here? I opened the door and asked sister-in-law, what's going on? Sorry to wake you up again, Liu Ryan said, a bit embarrassed. I only realized after I got home that I left in such a hurry when I came to see you. I forgot my purse. My keys and everything else are in there, so I can't get into my place. She sighed. I had no choice but to come back here. I was stunned. So what should we do? Liu Ryan sighed. I'll have to call a locksmith tomorrow. Is it alright if I stay here for the night? I scratched my head, unsure of what to do. Just give me a blanket. I'll sleep on the sofa in the living room. I felt a bit awkward. After all, she was my friend's wife, and staying here, just the two of us, felt inappropriate. Seeing my hesitation, Liu Ryan suddenly burst into tears. I quickly let her in, closed the door, and said, sister-in-law, why not ask a close friend if you could stay over for the night? If G. Boda finds out we stayed together, things could get really complicated. It's so late. I'd feel terrible disturbing anyone else. Liu Ryan wiped away her tears. The thing is, she continued, I don't want my friends to know about my current predicament. I didn't have much else to say, so I went to the closet, grabbed a blanket, and set it on the sofa in the living room. Thank you, Liu Ryan said, biting her lip. Can I use the bathroom to freshen up? I rummaged around, finding a set of pajamas and toiletries to hand her. These pajamas are new, I said. They're a bit big, but I hope they'll do. Thank you. He Kong, I really appreciate it. She took the items from my hands and turned to head into the bathroom. The door clicked shut behind her. The bathroom door was frosted glass, and with the light on inside, her silhouette appeared softly outlined on the door, standing outside. I could vaguely see her movements as she undressed, her graceful curves blurred yet alluring. The sound of running water started. I could even see droplets slipping from her hair, trailing down her body. I felt my heartbeat quicken, blood rushing faster. I could hardly stand it. Realizing how inappropriate my thoughts were, I quickly looked away. Returning to my room, I turned on the TV, but I couldn't register a single word the host was saying. I drank half a bottle of water, yet still felt parched. The urge to glance at the bathroom door again was strong. I knew this wasn't right, so I opened the window. A gust of night air rushed in, its chill hitting me instantly. I shivered, and my racing thoughts began to calm down. The sound of running water in the bathroom stopped. Liu Ryan must have finished her chore, but there was no sound from outside. I opened my door to check if she needed anything. To my surprise, Liu Ryan was standing right outside, her hand raised, about to knock. The door swung open, and she lost her balance, stumbling forward straight into my arms. Thrown off balance, we both tumbled to the ground together. "Sorry, I'm so sorry," she stammered. "I didn't know you were standing here." Liu Ryan was now on top of me. Instinctively, I moved to help her up, but my hand accidentally touched somewhere it shouldn't have. She gasped, like she'd been shocked, and looked at me with irritation, her eyes full of anger. "Why are you so sneaky?" she snapped. "Not a sound." "Sorry," I said quickly. "That was my fault." Feeling a bit embarrassed, I didn't know how to explain myself. "Sister-in-law, are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine." After calming down, she said, "I just wanted to ask, do you have a hairdryer?" I nodded, retrieving one from the drawer, and handed it to her. Liu Ryan took it, glanced around the room, unplugged the TV, and plugged in the hairdryer, beginning to dry her hair. I felt speechless for a moment. This woman, she really was making herself at home. I leaned back against the pillow, scrolling through videos on my phone. After drying her hair for a bit, she put the hairdryer back in the drawer. She sat down beside me and said, "Well, since you're clearly wide awake now, I wanted to ask you about some legal issues." Who says I'm not tired? In reality, I was exhausted, barely managing to stay alert, but I politely replied, "What legal questions do you have? If he's convicted of embezzlement, how long would the sentence be?" I thought about it and replied, "Generally, it's under 3 years. For large amounts, it could be 3 to 10 years, and of course, for extremely large sums, it might even be over 10 years. Or even worse." Hearing this, Liu Ryan's eyes began to well up with tears, her voice catching as she asked, "What counts as a large or extremely large amount?" I glanced at her, yawning. "I don't remember the exact figures, but you can look it up online. I just hope Jiboda will be okay." She sighed. "No matter what happens, whether it's 3 years or 5, I'll wait for him." She looked at me earnestly. "Please look after him for me." Seeing her in tears, I was at a loss for words to console her. It said that true feelings show in tough times, and to hear her say such things at a moment like this filled me with a deep respect. Jiboda could be careless and even a bit reckless, with a complicated history in relationships. But to have a wife like this, what more could he ask for? Liu Ryan kept talking, some of it asking for my advice, and some were little stories about her and Jiboda. I was so tired that I started to drift off, nodding in and out of sleep. The lights in the room were off, but I had no idea when Liu Ryan had left. I remembered nothing at all. The next morning, I was jolted awake by my alarm. Stretching out my arm, I let out a yawn, but my hand landed on something. No, not something. Someone. With a start, I realized Liu Ryan was lying right next to me, her back turned to me. Her hair spilled over one side of her face, partially hiding her features. A corner of my blanket covered her shoulders. My heart pounded, thundering in my chest. What in the world? I had somehow spent the whole night sleeping beside my friend's wife, sharing the same bed. The movement must have woken her up too, and she drowsily sat up. Our eyes meeting in mutual shock. In that moment, it felt like the air had frozen solid. She shrieked, hiding her face behind her hair. How did this happen? I guess I was so tired after talking to you, and I must have fallen asleep without realizing. I just sat there, stunned, unable to say a word for a long time. Nothing happened, I mumbled. We didn't do anything. Liu Ryan quickly climbed out of bed, biting her lip and said, "But don't you dare tell G. Boder." I snapped out of it, sister-in-law. "I'm not that foolish." She looked at me, her expression suddenly serious. "This is our secret. Something we'll take to the grave. If you even breathe a word of this, I'll make sure you regret it." I repeated, sister-in-law. "I'm not that foolish." She shot me a look. Enough with the sister-in-law already. Just call me Ryan. From now on, we're like siblings. I was momentarily taken aback, then nodded. All right. I reached out to someone at G. Boda's company, a man named Du Yuji, the head of the employee monitoring department. I introduced myself as the attorney hired by G. Boda's family. I wanted to discuss the case with them and see if we could talk things through. Du Yuji didn't make any excuses, saying we could meet to discuss the matter. I asked, could I bring along his family member? Who exactly in his family? He asked. His wife, I clarified. There was a pause on his end, and then he said, Mr. He, it would be better if you came alone. There are things that might not be appropriate for his wife to hear. I was surprised, not entirely sure what he meant by that, but I agreed nonetheless. Liu Ryan was eager to understand more about the case, and had even taken time off work. But when I told her that I'd have to go alone, she let out a disappointed "Oh, He Kong. Please handle the conversation carefully." She urged, listen to their requests. Like any compensation they might be seeking, as long as it can help reduce G. Boda's sentence, I'll cooperate in any way I can. I nodded, sister-in-law. Don't worry, I'll convey everything you've said. That afternoon, I arrived at the company building. Ryuji had someone escort me to a quiet, secluded meeting room. I expressed my gratitude for meeting with me, considering the case had already reached the investigation authorities. The company could have easily refused to communicate with us. Mr. Du, I began. After G. Boda was taken into custody, his family has been extremely worried. I paused, then decided to be direct. So let me get straight to the point. What exactly is he involved in? Du Yuji explained. Well, G. Boda isn't a very high-ranking employee here. He does manage an outsourced team of dozens. He has significant influence over their performance reviews and bonuses. In other words, he continued, his position isn't that high, but his authority is considerable. I was stunned. G. Boda had always told me he was a manager, but clearly he had exaggerated his role a bit. Du Yuji went on, the issue arose when one of the women in the outsourced team reported him. She claimed he used his position to pursue inappropriate relationships, dating 5 of the outsourced female employees simultaneously, and without proper approval, increased their salaries. What? Dating 5 women at once? My jaw nearly dropped. This was beyond anything I'd imagined. Could this really be the same G. Boda I knew? It shattered my sense of reality. One of the women who reported him, Du Yuji continued, was actually one of his girlfriends. He claimed he was single and pursued these women under the guise of a serious relationship. Some of them even met his family. If his wife found out about all this, what kind of reaction should that be? Huh, what reaction? Is this something any normal person could even do? If I were Liu Ryan, I'd have the urge to avoid him entirely. Du Yuji said, the company is not a place for his womanizing. The nature of this incident is severe, so we reported it to the authorities immediately. Additionally, the finance department found that G. Bodong, through various pretexts, embezzled over $1 million in company assets And that's not even counting the illegal raises he gave those girls. Allinone was asked by his family to express their willingness to make full restitution in hopes of gaining the company's forgiveness and leniency in handling the situation. Yuji shrug, we're a commercial enterprise. If Jibadong is willing to make full restitution, allowing the company to avoid any financial loss, we are open to providing a letter of forgiveness to the judicial authorities. You're an attorney, so you should understand. This is a significant factor in sentencing. Yuji's stance was clear. They wanted to recover their losses. I asked, how much time are you giving us to gather the funds? That depends on you. Yuji replied after a brief pause. The case is straightforward. The evidence is overwhelming. As I understand it, this will be sent over by the end of the month. I understand. The longer we delay this, the worse it'll be for us. When I left the company, I met with Liu Ryan and explained Yuji's compensation request. Of course, I didn't say a word about Jibadong's romantic entanglements. I'm not sure if I was right to handle it that way, but after all, Jibadong is my friend. From my perspective, I can't betray him. But as for Liu Ryan, I feel a deep sense of guilt. This truly is a case of misplaced trust. She married a complete playboy. I thought Jibadong would settle down after marriage, but he reached new heights. Liu Ryan murmured, what? Jibadong embezzled from the company? Where did all that money go? How could I know nothing about this? Unfortunately, only Jibadong likely knows the answer. But I have a strong hunch. Jibadong probably spent all that money on other women. Liu Ryan asked He Kong, could you analyze this legally for me? If we repay this amount, how much could it affect Jibadong's sentencing? This is a private enterprise, after all. I considered it and replied, if the company issues a forgiveness letter and states it doesn't wish to pursue criminal charges, he could apply for leniency. I've seen cases like this. The chances of a lesser sentence are high. Liu Ryan resolutely said, then I'll do whatever it takes to gather that money, even if it means selling our home. I watched the woman before me falling into silence. 2 weeks later, Liu Ryan had scraped together enough. She transferred it to the company's account, as provided. Yuji honored his promise. According to my specified format, he issued a receipt and a letter of forgiveness. I submitted the materials to the authorities and wrote an application for leniency. Sure enough, they agreed to offer a lighter sentence for Jibadong. Jibadong was released from the detention center. Liu Ryan and I went to pick him up. As he walked out, Jibadong hugged me, saying, good brother, being released without a sentence. I owe it all to you. I replied with a serious face, don't thank me, thank your wife. Jibadong turned to Liu Ryan, his voice choking, honey, I was wrong. Thank you for everything. I promise I won't mess up again. Liu Ryan didn't reproach him, but leaned against his shoulder, bursting into tears. Jibadong cried as well, sniffling and sobbing. I watched silently, wondering if he was truly remorseful or just putting on a show. Sigh, other people's family matters. Why should I be so invested? Liu Ryan said to Jibadong, dear, your friend is a true gem, professional, reliable, and kind, but he's still single. I'm thinking of introducing him to someone. Jibadong replied, absolutely. Leave it to me. The next day was Saturday. Jibadong arranged for me, Zhang Chen, and Zhao Yitao to meet for dinner. Afterward, we went to a karaoke bar. The four of us were college dormmates with a strong bond. Jibadong and Zhang Chen were both married. Zhao Yitao and I were still single. But Zhao Yitao and I were in different situations. I'd never had a relationship before. While he had just broken up with his ex, he was simply in between relationships. While we were singing, Jibadong suddenly announced, in a bit, there's another girl joining us. Her name is Su Wen. She's a friend of my wife, a real beauty. and still single. He Kong Yi Tao. Whichever of you is interested, feel free to pursue her. Just then, I received a message as well. It was from Liu Ryan He Kong. I was planning to introduce you to my friend today, but something urgent came up at work, so she be joining you guys on her own. Her name is Su Wen. Take some time to get to know each other. I replied, thanks sis. Not long after, Su Wen arrived. She truly had an amazing figure and looks. Zhao Yi Tao's eyes lit up, and he immediately sat beside her, asking all sorts of questions. By the end of the night, the two of them left together. I felt a bit awkward, sitting there without getting a word in. 2 weeks passed. Ji Batong invited me to his place for dinner. At the table, Liu Ryan asked He Kong, how are things going with Su Wen? I mentioned Su Wen, but she seemed vague about it. I said, thank you sis, but we haven't really stayed in touch. I guess she wasn't interested in me. Ji Batong took a sip of wine and said, Su Wen and Zhao Yi Tao are together now. What? Hearing this, Liu Ryan shot up from her seat and confronted Ji Batong. I told you to introduce her to He Kong. How did Zhao Yi Tao get involved in this? What exactly happened? Did you even introduce them properly? Honey, it's all about fate, you know? Rubbish! Liu Ryan snapped. You didn't tell Zhao Yi Tao clearly, did you? That Su Wen was meant for He Kong. Ji Batong set his wine glass down, sitting there in silence. I quickly stepped in to defuse the situation. Sis, Ji Batong is right. It all comes down to fate. You can't force these things. Liu Ryan, still fuming, said, I just can't accept it. And Su Wen really? A bit unreliable, but forget it. I'll keep looking for someone for you. I quickly expressed my thanks and toasted her with a glass. Liu Ryan was indeed determined to find me a girlfriend. One weekend, she suggested going out of town for a barbecue, insisting Ji Batong bring me along, because there'd be some eligible single women there. She thought I might meet someone. That afternoon, the three of us drove to the barbecue spot. On the way, for some reason, Ji Batong and his wife got into a huge argument. Liu Ryan even ended up crying. Then Ji Batong, irritated, said, forget it, I'm not going. So, at the next intersection, he turned the car around and started heading back. Liu Ryan shouted, you wouldn't dare go back. If you turn around now, we're not done here. Ji Batong replied, fine, then you to go. I'm going home. Caught in the middle, I felt completely awkward, stuck between them, unsure of what to do. I tried to calm them down, sis. Please don't argue. Actually, I have something to do tonight anyway. I shouldn't stay out till late either. Maybe we should just call it off. Liu Ryan leaned against the car, sobbing quietly. Later, I found out why they had argued. It was because of Ji Batong's job situation. After losing his job, he had been sending out resumes, but there was no response. Finally, a company in the south offered Ji Batong an opportunity. He discussed it with Liu Ryan, expressing his interest in working down south, but Liu Ryan immediately refused. She felt that if Ji Batong went to work in the south, they'd be in a long-distance relationship, leaving family and stability behind. She thought it wasn't worth the trouble and insisted he find something locally. I also advised Ji Batong to avoid relocating if possible. It just didn't seem worth it. But Ji Batong was set in his decision, determined to take this opportunity in the south. He said it was a good stepping stone and that he wouldn't stay there for long. 2 years at most. After gaining experience, he'd return. In the end, Ji Batong took the job in the south. Before he left, he invited me for a drink, confiding, brother, you think I want this upheaval? My wife spent everything we had to get me out of that mess, even going into debt. As a man, I need to shoulder the family's burden. This company is offering a high salary, plus shares in the company. If I pass on this, the chance is gone. I sighed. He had a point. Sometimes life is like that. It seems like there's a choice, but there's really no choice at all. Ji Badong continued, I'll need to rely on you to keep an eye on things back home. I dot one misstep and the regret lasts forever. I picked up on his tone and quickly asked Ji Badong, be honest with me. Are you trying to avoid something? He fell silent at my question, downed a glass of wine, and said, there's a woman who keeps pestering me. It's driving me nuts. Brother, just promise me not to let Ryan find out. I sighed, handle your own business properly. At that moment, I couldn't help feeling frustrated, and I felt truly sorry for Liu Ryan. She had no idea. Completely left in the dark. It was heartbreaking. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed since Ji Badong left. One evening, just as I got home from work, I received a call from Ji Badong. He sounded anxious. Brother, are you busy? I need a favor, urgently. I quickly asked, what's going on? Ji Badong, calm down. Explain slowly. My fish is about to die. Ji Badong's voice rose in pitch. The water pump in the fish tank broke, and the water's so cloudy. I can't even see the fish. Wait, you're prized around a fish? That thing's worth tens of thousands. If it dies, it'd be a huge loss. Ji Badong said, hey, don't jinx it. I can't let it die. I've had it for 4 or 5 years. I'm attached to it. I quickly put on my shoes, called a car, and rushed to Ji Badong's place. I knocked on the door, and Liu Ryan opened it, letting me in. Liu Ryan had probably just gotten off work, too. She had changed into loose, comfortable loungewear, giving her a relaxed and alluring look. I immediately glanced at the fish tank and couldn't help but gasp. The water was indeed murky, and the fish was nowhere in sight. I quickly asked, sis, where's the fish? Liu Ryan replied, I don't know. When I got home. This is how I found it. It's over. The fish must have jumped out of the tank. I quickly crouched down, looking around. Sure enough, I spotted a few fish scales under the couch. I pushed the couch aside with all my strength and saw the arowana lying there on the floor, still breathing faintly, holding on. I hurriedly picked it up and put it back in the tank, but the fish immediately started listing to one side, clearly struggling. I frantically rummaged through drawers till I found the oxygen equipment, plugged it into the tank. Outside, Ji Badong had a large barrel filled with spare water. I drained a third of the tank water and replaced it with the fresh water from the barrel. After about half an hour, the fish gradually began to recover. I was exhausted, but at least the fish was saved. I sent Ji Badong a message, letting him know everything was taken care of. As I started putting the tubes and equipment back into the cabinet, my foot slipped on the wet floor, and I hit my head directly on the edge of the cabinet. A sharp pain shot through my forehead. When I touched it, I realized I was bleeding. Seeing this, Liu Ryan hurriedly helped me up and had me sit on the sofa, telling me to stay still. She went to the cabinet, found some alcohol and a bandage, and started to treat my wound. I was sitting on the sofa, and Liu Ryan stood in front of me, bending over to clean the cut with an alcohol pad. She was wearing loose loungewear, and the neckline was naturally quite deep. In her bent-over position, from my angle, I could see everything inside her shirt. I realized, aside from the loungewear, she wasn't wearing any other undergarments. The curved silhouette left me completely speechless. My gaze was fixed there, frozen in place. Liu Ryan noticed me staring, but didn't seem embarrassed. She chuckled playfully, then placed her hand over her chest, adjusting her shirt. I blushed, mumbling sorry. Liu Ryan teased, oh, shouldn't I be the one apologizing? Polluting your view? I stammered, not knowing how to respond. After putting the bandage on, she sat beside me and asked, "Feeling better now?" I replied, my head still a bit dizzy. She laughed. "Didn't look like you were dizzy a moment ago." Curious, she added, "By the way, you've really never had a girlfriend before?" I felt a bit embarrassed. It's true, I haven't dated before. Liu Ryan looked at me as if I were some rare species. "Oh, in that case, I'll forgive you this time." She playfully punched my shoulder and chided, "Next time you're this rude, I'll tell Ji Batong." "Sorry, sis," I mumbled, feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles. I quickly stood up, feeling awkward and unsure of what to do. She said, "I made some food. Why don't you stay for dinner? Consider it a thank you for helping out and even getting hurt." I waved my hands. "No, really, I have some things to do. Thanks, sis, but I should get going." "Come on, it's after work. What could you possibly have to do?" Without responding, I turned and left the apartment, closed the door, and took the elevator down. The fresh air outside felt much lighter. Just then, I remembered my landlord was selling the apartment, so I was forced to move out. Recently, work had been overwhelming, and I hadn't had the time to organize my new place. Bags and boxes were scattered everywhere. Some boxes couldn't even fit in my room and had to be left in the hallway. On a Saturday morning, I was working overtime when I got a call from Liu Ryan. "Hello, He Kong," she said. "Celebrating your new place. Aren't we doing something for it?" Her tone was teasing. "By the way, I don't think you've ever treated me to a meal." I awkwardly replied, "Sis, let's wait until G comes back. I'll take you both out." "Theft? At this rate, that'll be never." Liu Ryan sounded a bit displeased. "You may as well just admit you don't want to. I'm free this afternoon. I'll come over and help you out." I quickly replied, No, sis. I'm working overtime today. Really don't have the time. Plus, the place is a mess. Let me tidy up first before I have you over." "Perfect." She said, "I'm just as free, so I can help you clean up. When you get back, we can have dinner together." She paused. "Oh, and I'm bringing a girl along." He Kong, don't turn down a good offer. Resigned, I said, "All right, I'll head back early this afternoon." Liu Ryan laughed. "Now, that's the right attitude. Send me the address of your new place and send over the key as well. It's a code lock." I replied, "I'll just give you the code." I sent her my address and the door code. Around 3 p.m., I got home and found Liu Ryan with another girl tidying up. They'd even brought in the boxes I'd left in the hallway. The unfamiliar girl was quite tall, with fair skin. Not exactly stunning, but with a quiet beauty. Her movements and posture had an effortless elegance. Liu Ryan introduced her. "This is my cousin, Huan. She's a university professor, a true intellectual." I exchanged a few polite words with Huan, mostly thanking her for helping out. Then Liu Ryan pulled me aside and whispered, "I've introduced you to one of my best connections. Don't let me down." I thanked her profusely, "Sis. In this city, you're honestly the one who treats me the best." I'm really moved. Suddenly, Liu Ryan remembered something. She pointed at a long rectangular box in the living room and asked, "By the way, He Kong, what's in that box?" "It's heavy." Huan and I had a hard time dragging it in from the hallway. I looked at the box on the floor, feeling confused. As far as I remembered, I didn't own anything that large, and I hadn't ordered anything online recently either. Seeing my puzzled expression, Liu Ryan rolled her eyes, then walked over and used a box cutter to open it. Inside, a lock of hair was visible. "Wait," Liu Ryan said, frowning. "This looks like human hair." Both Liu Ryan and Huan exchanged glances, momentarily stunned. Then Liu Ryan pulled open the box completely, revealing a life-sized female doll. To be honest, It was almost the size of a real person, with finely crafted features, two large, expressive eyes. A really lifelike. It was an adult item. The material looked like silicone. It must have been expensive. The smile on Liu Ryan's face froze, and she turned to look at me, with a mix of emotions that was hard to decipher. Xu Yuan's expression, on the other hand, was clear. Her eyes filled with disdain and disgust. She dusted off her clothes and moved aside. "No, sis. This isn't mine," I stammered, pointing at the doll on the floor. "This must be a delivery sent to the wrong address," I said. "Or maybe something the previous tenant ordered." Liu Ryan shrugged. "Buying things like this is no big deal. Shows they're careful about keeping things private. It's a way to stay out of trouble." Her comment was obviously directed at Ziwei. Ziwei just smiled. "Cousin, I just remembered. I have something to take care of at home tonight. I'd better head out." Liu Ryan rubbed her face, taking a deep breath, looking a bit downcast. After Ziwei left, it was just the two of us in the room. Liu Ryan gave the package a light kick and yelled at me, "He Kong, aren't you a bit too old for this? You should be out there finding someone, and instead you're collecting all this ridiculous stuff. What's wrong with you?" I tried to defend myself. "Sister-in-law, it's really not mine." "Oh, so now you're lying," she shot back. She grabbed her coat. "If that's the case, I don't even want to call you a friend anymore. My cousin probably thinks I introduced her to some. How are we supposed to face each other now?" "Sister-in-law, please listen to me," I begged. But she pulled her hand away. "Don't touch me. We're done." At that moment, there was a knock at the door. It had been left slightly ajar, and a man in his 30s poked his head in. "I'm the neighbor from across the hall. Just wondering, did you guys take a box I left in the hallway?" Liu Ryan glanced at me, her face turning red with embarrassment. I pointed at the box and the doll on the ground. Then I asked the man, "Is this the thing you mentioned? Is this it?" The man glanced at the items on the ground. His expression immediately changed. He shouted loudly, "How dare you mess with other people's things like this? Is this yours? You just tore it open without even looking." Liu Ryan replied sheepishly, "Sorry about that, my mistake. We just opened it, that's all. The contents inside are untouched. Take it away if you want." The man fumed and said, "Impossible. Since you've opened it, you've used it. There's no way I can use it now. Someone has to pay for it." I stepped up to him and said, "Come on, man. Isn't this unreasonable? Who says I need to be reasonable with you?" The man raised his fist, swinging it in anger. "I paid over 6,000 for this imported item ... If you don't compensate me today, I'll call the police. This is ... Liu Ryan, frowning, said, "Fine. It's just 6,000, right? I'll pay you, but if you try to ask for more, that's extortion." The man took out his phone and showed the payment record. "See for yourself. Have I asked for a penny more?" Liu Ryan scanned the code. She transferred the money over. After he received the payment, he closed the door and walked off without looking back. I stared at her in disbelief, saying, "Are you just throwing money away? What else would you rather start? A fight with him? It's just not worth it." Liu Ryan pointed at the doll on the ground and said, "This one, consider it a gift from me to you. Who knows, maybe you'll find a use for it." She finished speaking and covered her mouth, giggling. My face turned bright red, and I was at a loss for words. Liu Ryan picked up the doll from the box and placed it on the sofa. Then she dressed it in her own coat. She looked to the left and then to the right, exclaiming, "Wow, this looks amazing. So beautiful. He Kong. She looks so delicate and charming. I'm even starting to fall for her." I was speechless. After a long silence, I finally said, "Sis-in-law, please don't make fun of me like this. This thing, I'll just toss it in the trash later." Liu Ryan shot me a look and chided, You dare ... You really think I'd waste money for nothing? Just leave her in the living room. It can be a decoration. Isn't she quite a sight? People might really misunderstand me. With a playful smile, Liu Ryan said, I'm assigning her to watch over you. No mischief allowed. And so, more than a month went by. One afternoon, Liu Ryan called me. He Kong, I managed to get to tickets for a movie premiere through a friend. After the movie, you can even take photos with the main cast. I'm giving you these 2 tickets, so you can take a girl with you if you're free. I quickly said, thanks, sis-in-law, but I don't have a girlfriend. You know that. You know that all too well. I don't even have a potential dating prospect right now. So about those premiere tickets, why don't you just use them yourself? Liu Ryan chided, if you take a girl to see the movie, you might just find yourself a prospect. How can you not see the cause and effect here? Honestly, you're as stubborn as a block of wood. I'm giving you good advice, but you take it for granted. I sighed, sis-in-law. I really don't have anyone to take. She paused and then sighed too. Well, what to do then? These tickets were hard to come by. It would be such a waste to let them go unused. Liu Ryan murmured over the phone. How about this? Why don't we just go together? What do you say? A buzzing noise filled my head. Watching a movie with a friend's wife. That's definitely not appropriate. Watching a movie together is quite an intimate social activity. When it's a man and a woman, it implies a romantic connection, or at least heading in that direction. There are boundaries between people. Once those boundaries are crossed, it can lead to all kinds of trouble. If G. Boda found out that I watched a movie with his wife, no explanation would be enough to clear it up. So I said, thanks, sis-in-law, but I'm about to go on a business trip. I really can't go with you. Alright then, she replied, her voice sounding a bit disappointed and maybe a little irritated. Before I could say another word, she hung up the phone. It seemed I may have upset her, but weighing the consequences, I really had no other choice. If I had to choose between G. Boda and Liu Ryan as a friend, I'd have to choose G. Boda. There's no specific reason. It's simply a matter of conscience. A few days later, Liu Ryan called me again. She said her golden arowana wasn't lively anymore and wouldn't eat even when she fed it. She didn't know if it was sick, so I went over to take a look. It truly didn't seem very lively, and its eyes looked a bit cloudy. I suspected it might be a water quality issue. Such a prized fish, kept in this condition ... It was really a shame. I spent a while tinkering around, and eventually changed the water in the tank. As I was doing this, Liu Ryan was in the kitchen cooking. It was close to noon, and she had prepared a full table of dishes, even setting out a bottle of wine. She said, it's a bit much to trouble you like this. Sorry for the inconvenience. I still felt somewhat reserved in front of Liu Ryan, sis-in-law. Please don't say that. G. Boda is my best friend. I emphasized my friendship with G. Boda. And sure enough, when I mentioned his name, a shadow passed over her face. He Kong, what do you think of G. Boda as a person? I was startled, staring at her, unsure why she'd suddenly ask such a question. Liu Ryan sighed, sometimes I get this feeling. I've been with G. Boda for quite a while, yet sometimes it feels like I don't know him at all. I thought for a moment and said, maybe it's because you two don't share many hobbies, but that's something you could work on, right? Liu Ryan shook her head. I just don't feel any care from him these days. Whenever he calls, the only thing he asks about is how his fish is doing. It feels like I don't even matter as much as a fish. As she spoke, her eyes grew moist. A single tear slid down, falling into her wine glass, sending small ripples across the surface. She raised her glass and clinked it against mine. An odd silence fell between us. Looking at her, a phrase came to mind. Tears in the wine. Marriage, it seems. is truly like a walled city. Some are desperate to get in, others feel trapped and want out. Some long for freedom. Every family has its own struggles. I could only think, all beings suffer. At that moment, I didn't know how to console the woman in front of me. To tell her to try and understand her husband. To be more forgiving? It felt dishonest. I couldn't bring myself to say it. There was clearly a problem in her marriage with Jiboda, but it wasn't her fault. Even though Jiboda is married, he's unsettled and directionless, lacking charm, and he doesn't know what he really wants. It's like the bear that gathers corn, grabbing for everything he sees, and ending up with nothing in the end. Noticing my silence, Liu Ryan asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about my future, about how to make my partner feel secure, without so much pain." She filled my glass and said, honestly, "He Kong, I envy your future wife. Whoever she is, she's incredibly lucky to be able to marry you in the end. I haven't known you for long, but I feel like you're a gold mine. And the deeper one digs, the more I see, the more I realize how rare your qualities are. Sis-in-law, you're flattering me." She looked deeply into my eyes and said quietly, "I know you're intentionally avoiding me. Am I that scary?" I clinked my glass against hers and drained it in one gulp. Liu Ryan covered her face and began to sob softly. I stood up, grabbed my coat from the sofa and put it on, preparing to leave. She stood up as well, blocking my way. She leaned forward slightly, resting her head on my shoulder, sobbing quietly. I felt a wave of awkwardness, wanting to push her away, but it felt too harsh to do so. After a moment, she pulled away and said, "I'm sorry. He Kong, forgive me for losing control, but right now I'm in so much pain. Jibo has cheated on me." Hearing this, I wasn't surprised. After all, the truth can't stay hidden forever. It was bound to come out eventually, just a matter of time. I looked at her and gently wiped away her tears. "He Kong, did you already know?" Reluctantly, I replied, "I didn't know the details." Liu Ryan continued, "A few days ago, a woman came to me and told me about things Jibo did at his last company ... He Kong, can I trust him?" I said, "This is something you have to decide for yourself." Liu Ryan said, "I confronted Jibo, and he admitted to it, begging me for forgiveness with tears streaming down his face. Now I just feel lost." I sighed, not knowing what to say. The woman's tears flowed like pearls from a broken string as she leaned against my shoulder again and began to sob loudly. Liu Ryan called me to check on the fish a few more times, but I truly dreaded going to her house. It was an instinctive retreat from my heart. Right now, the couple was at a crossroads, and how they moved forward was up to them. I couldn't get involved in this. In fact, I told Jiboda, "If you keep this up with the fish, they'll definitely die. Since you can't take care of them, why not just let me have them?" Jiboda, who was obsessed with fish, replied, "Absolutely not. Don't mess with my fish business. I'm setting up a monitor soon to keep an eye on their condition at all times. Then your wife has to help you take care of them." I sighed and reminded him, "Jiboda, you better come back soon. Otherwise, you'll lose the fish and your wife." Suddenly, Jiboda shot back, "He Kong, you're not planning to make a move on my fish and my wife, are you?" I paused for a moment before replying, "If you don't let me take the fish, I might just start visiting your house every day. Who knows, your wife might really take a liking to me." Jiboda sighed, "Brother, even if I can't trust her, I absolutely trust you. Fine then, take the fish ... But as for my wife, even if no one tries to steal her away, I'm afraid I still can't keep her ... sigh. So, I advise you to come back. I'll think it over." Jiboda hung up after reading that, but I could hear the ambient sounds on the other end. A woman was calling for him, her voice laced with laziness. I sighed. What more could I say? I took the golden arowana for myself and never went back to Liu Ryan's house again. Once, Liu Ryan mentioned wanting to visit a temple to pray and asked me to accompany her. I made up an excuse to decline. Then I received some news. I got a photo from Liu Ryan. The picture seemed to have been taken from a distance because the figures were a bit blurry, but it was clear enough to see Jiboda with a young woman. They looked quite close, walking out of a shopping mall together. Liu Ryan sent another message. I've seen the ugliness of human nature. I quickly replied, where are you? In Huainan, where Jiboda works. Her voice was choked with emotion. I wanted to talk to him face to face, but instead, I saw the scene ... Ooh ... He Kong, I hate you. I was taken aback. What did she have to do with Jiboda? Why hate me? Hatred. What should I do next? Don't call me sis-in-law anymore, Liu Ryan cried. And don't contact me again. You wanted to see this outcome, didn't you? I'm fulfilling your wishes. Goodbye. The woman hung up the phone. When I tried to call back, it showed as a disconnected number. I had been blocked. Liu Ryan had blocked me on everything. I couldn't understand. Why does she hate me so much? Months went by, and I received a call from Jiboda. Hey, buddy, I'm getting a divorce. His tone was surprisingly flat. Oh, when are you coming back? Jiboda replied, I'm not going back. I found someone here. I plan to settle down here now. Oh, that's good. I didn't know how to respond. What about Liu Ryan? Where has she gone? Hearing this, Jiboda seemed surprised. You two haven't been in touch? I replied, no. It's been several months since we last spoke. Jiboda let out an oh, I owe her so much, but I can't go back to the past. If only there were regret pills, I wouldn't have let her go. Liu Ryan is a good woman. I remained silent, feeling that the brother I once confided in was drifting further away from me. Jiboda asked again, He Kong, have you found someone? Not yet. Jiboda fell silent for a moment, then dropped a bombshell, stop looking. Why not consider Liu Ryan? You two could probably make it work. I widened my eyes, unable to believe my ears. Jiboda, what are you talking about? There was silence on the other end for a moment. I'm just sharing my honest thoughts. If it bothers you, forget I said anything ... I'm sorry for her. I just hope she has a good life moving forward. With that, Jiboda hung up the phone, but his voice still echoed in my mind. 6 months later, I was at home sorting through my things, thinking about packing up that doll and throwing it away. It wasn't a lucky charm, when suddenly there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find a woman standing outside. It was Zhu Wei, Liu Ryan's cousin. I hurriedly asked, what brings you here, cousin? Zhu Wei smirked. Who's your cousin? Don't make assumptions. I invited her in and poured her a cup of tea. Zhu Wei, what do you need from me? Zhu Wei looked around the messy room. This place is a disaster. You could use a woman around. My heart sank and I stammered. Are you suggesting you want to be my girlfriend? Zhu Wei shot me a glance. Sorry, but I'm already engaged to my boyfriend. We're getting married next month, so if you want to give a gift, you'll have to figure that out. I felt embarrassed, like a confused monk unable to comprehend. Zhu Wei sighed. My cousin ... Do you remember her? Of course I remember. What about her? I asked again. Where has she gone? Zhu Wei said, I feel like you two are just torturing each other. What do you mean by that? Exactly what it sounds like. Zhu Wei paused and then asked, He Kong, do you want to see her? I nodded. Where is she? Zhu Wei turned and stepped outside. After about 5 or 6 minutes, she pushed someone into the room. It was Liu Ryan. She looked much thinner than before, her face devoid of expression, but her eyes were full of sorrow. Ryan, I stepped forward to greet her. This was the first time I'd called her by name. Ziyu made a face and said, "You to chat, I'll be leaving." Liu Ryan said, "You dot, are you alright?" But Ziyu had already dashed out of the room, closing the door behind her. Liu Ryan and I looked at each other, our gazes intertwining. She said softly, "If I hadn't come to find you, I suppose you would never have looked for me." I replied, "You blocked me on everything, but I unblocked you the next day." She bit her lip and said, "So, don't make excuses, you never tried to find me." I was taken aback, momentarily speechless. Liu Ryan sighed, "Men need to be bolder to find true love, and women too." So I came, my nose tinged with bitterness and my eyes grew moist. A man doesn't easily shed tears, but when feelings run deep, it becomes hard to hold back. I stepped closer and tightly embraced her, but she froze. "Sis-in-law, I love you," I couldn't help but say. She was taken aback for a moment. "What? You're serious?" We locked eyes and couldn't help but laugh. In that moment, our barriers slowly faded away, and we shared a kiss. The clock ticked away, but time seemed to slow down. The end.